Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. We've heard some impactful statements from my colleagues today about what New Brunswickers in their ridings are experiencing, whether it's at ERs or at food banks or at shelters, because the rising cost of living is visible to New Brunswickers right now on the streets as it gets cold. We know that people are struggling to make ends meet, and we continue to wait for affordability measures from this government. They've dangled the notion of tax cuts. The Minister for Finance said that he prefers tax cuts. We had a statement in the House from the member for Miramichi about how much this government prioritizes tax cuts. So I'm wondering if they could give us some clarity and confirmation, specifically from the Premier, because I know the Premier also is a proponent of tax cuts. Could they specify for us what tax cuts New Brunswickers should expect and when those will come?
Minister of Finance and Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the member opposite for the question. Thank you very much. Yes, tax cuts continue. We've cut them already. We've cut personal income tax. We've cut personal income tax 3 times, I think it was. We raised the basic personal exemption. Put in a number of property tax cuts. So, yeah, tax cuts is one aspect of it, but there are so many other aspects that we've brought in as well that are helping people in New Brunswick. Just like the minimum wage. But the tax cuts, the minimum wage rising, the seniors' low-income support as well. You know what? Despite that, despite the economic impact that we had during COVID, Mr. Speaker, we continue to grow in New Brunswick. Average real GDP growth was 1.5% between 2018 and 2022 during this government's time in office. The growth added $2.5 billion to our economy, and it continues. The GDP this year is expected to run on our standards at about 1, but consensus gives it about 1.2. And
thank you, Mr. Deputy Opposition.
Mr. Speaker, this government continues to tease New Brunswickers that we'll do some affordability measures. Maybe there's a tax cut coming. I didn't hear one in the answer that was just given there. You're giving people hope that you might do something to make life more affordable, but then you're not delivering. Could you confirm more clearly, should New Brunswickers be holding out hope for a tax cut or not?
The Honourable the Premier. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, I think that what New Brunswickers should be looking at is there absolutely is hope in this province. And, Mr. Speaker, not only in the affordability clause, but looking at what we announced in the throne speech in terms of the seniors' benefit, in terms of the 60-40 split going the other way, Mr. Speaker, to help people stay in their home, in terms of our mental health and addiction centre, Mr. Speaker, which is going to provide a whole new avenue of hope for people in this province. And, Mr. Speaker, we're also focused very heavily on the cost every day of energy, Mr. Speaker, and how we can reduce that cost, whether it be through the home heat program, Mr. Speaker, whether it be through other measures that we can help people to reduce their consumption, or whether we can, Mr. Speaker, just get a better formula from the federal government. And they've already started down that trail, Mr. Speaker, on the home heat and oil reduction. So, Mr. Speaker, I think there is hope. And I think if we join forces here, maybe we should have a motion here on the floor that we're all supporting. The getting rid of the carbon tax, Mr. Speaker. We've seen what's happening across the country now, where they're looking seriously that we need to seriously axe that tax, Mr. Speaker.
Deputy Opposition Official.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm glad that the Premier brought up energy costs and trying to make those more affordable for New Brunswick, because he has in his power today the ability to make gas cheaper for New Brunswickers, and yet we wait for the legislation that would repeal the Premier's carbon adjuster. I know he said he's looking at the EUB changing the funding formula. The EUB is an independent organization. I believe the Premier is aware of that. So will he take the action he can to save New Brunswickers the 4 cents that they're paying extra because of his legislation to pass that on to them?
The Honourable the Premier.
Mr. Speaker, it's an interesting thought because, you know, we said that Nova Scotia is doing the same thing, PEI is doing the same thing, Newfoundland is doing the same thing. So, Mr. Speaker, what the Leader of the Opposition seems to miss is that is what happens at a regulated price formula, Mr. Speaker. That's why EUP is involved with this. So it is the same in all 3 other provinces in Atlantic Canada. So maybe, in what I've been talking about lately, is can we actually look at, is there a benefit to regulated pricing? Is it helping us or is it not? But, Mr. Speaker, I said here previously that I would gladly look at any option here that we could pass here in this House to deal with not only that, but deal with the carbon tax, Mr. Speaker. Let's look at the big picture. Let's go for 20 cents a litre, Mr. Speaker. Let's not stop at Ford, quibble on 4. Let's make it a real difference when you fill up and you pull your car up to the pumps and you walk away and say, wow, that's different, because this province is making things happen. So I'm game on, Mr. Speaker, for that, and I would ask the Leader of the Opposition to be part of that. And let's write a letter together to Ottawa, Mr. Speaker.
Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There was a lot said there, and so I have 2 questions for the Premier, because we continue to wait for the energy strategy that he said was coming. I understand that it's going to include shale gas and some of yesterday's technologies that are fitting for yesterday's government. So I'm hoping he can answer when he will table the energy strategy, and if he's so interested in looking at regulated pricing, and it sounds like he is, if he could confirm for us when we can expect the government to put forward an analysis and a study on regulated gas prices in New Brunswick.
Minister of Natural Resources and Energy Development.
Mr. Speaker, to the member opposite, there's a lot of information that came from that question as well. She referred to a lot of stuff that came from the Premier, but we want to unpack what we just heard there. She's asking about a variety of different things, but really, what is the issue here? What is the issue? You're trying to create a narrative that we're not coming forward with initiatives that do good work. The energy strategy, let's talk about the energy strategy. We had members in this House stand here and say, when are we going to get a state of the forest strategy? It's never going to happen. Stood in the House, stood in the media, said it wasn't going to happen. Week later, we came out with the first time in over a decade of a state of the forest report and made it an annual report. What did the members opposite say when we came out with that and actually did what they said we weren't going to do? They said it's not good enough. Yeah. So an energy strategy compiled with all of the things that are going to power our economy with clean energy from a New Brunswick strategy is due to come in the near future.